Hi, everybody. Maria Galeotos here with Evans Realty Group. I'm a real estate agent here in Houston, Texas. And right now, what we're going to do is we're going to cover a very important document. If you are thinking of making an offer on a home that is a resale home, not a new construction, most likely your agent is going to use this contract. And so we're going to cover certain paragraphs that I think are important for you to know. So let me share my screen and let's get right into it. All right, so it's called the 1 to 4 family residential contract resale, and it's not used for condominium transactions. There's another contract that goes with condominiums. All right, so parties, these are where the names go. So the party would be the seller and another party would be the buyers. A property, the land, the homes usually have a legal description. And so they have lot numbers, block numbers. Addition would be the subdivision, the city, the county, the state, and the zip code. Improvements. Most of these here come with the house and should not be removed in any way, shape, or form. So the house, the garage, and all the fixtures and improvements attached to the above described real property, including without limitation, the following permanently installed and built-in items. Now this permanently installed and built-in items is in bold letters for a reason. So it says that if any, all equipment and appliances, balances, screens, shutters, awnings, wall-to-wall carpeting, mirrors, ceiling fans, attic fans, mailboxes, television antennas, mounts and brackets for televisions and speakers, heating and air conditioning units, security and fire detection equipment, wiring, plumbing, and lighting fixtures, chandeliers, water softener system, kitchen equipment, garage door openers, cleaning equipment, shrubbery, landscaping, outdoor cooking equipment, and all other property owned by the seller and attached to the above described real property. So these have to stay with the house. Now, there have been many disputes where a buyer has made an offer on the house with some of these fixtures here gone when they move, when they close on the house and they go to move in. There's even been disputes of shrubbery gone when the buyer was expecting it to be there. Accessories, the following describe related accessories, if any: window air conditioning unit, stove, fireplace screens, curtains and rods, blinds, window shades, draperies and rods, door keys, mailbox keys, above ground pool, swimming pool equipment and maintenance accessories, artificial fireplace logs and controls, for garage door, entry gates, and other improvements and accessories. Now, if the seller wants to keep some things, the best thing to do is to not have them there when buyers come to look at the house. That solves a lot of dispute issues. But here is where, if the seller wants to keep, let's say, if they have draperies and they're really nice and they think that they want to keep those, we would put it here. Draperies, anything that the seller wants to keep, we would put here. Sale price, this would be the cash portion, how much you're going to put down as a down payment, how much you're going to finance, and the total sales offer, the price, the sales price offer. Financing, so if you're going to get a loan, we would check this. This is called a third-party financing, meaning that most likely would be a bank. Okay, and here we would put the total amount of the financing. So it would be this amount here, okay? And here we would put if the contract is subject to buyer being approved for the financing described in the attached third-party financing addendum for credit approval, or if this contract is not subject to the buyer being approved for financing and does not involve FHA or VA financing. So we would check here if a buyer was getting a loan to finance this house, or we would check here if this was going to be a cash offer. You can also put assumption, the assumption of the unpaid principal balance of one more promissory notes described in the attached track loan assumption addendum. There are addendums that go, meaning, you know, extra forms that are attached to this contract. That's what an addendum is. There's also instances where a seller can finance the property, and we will put that here. Earnest money. Now, this is a very important paragraph. And this is where you would put, we would put how much money the buyer is giving as earnest money. And earnest money is kind of like a small down payment, which is held by the title company in a separate account. And it's called earnest money because the buyer is telling the seller that they are being earnest about doing the best that they can to secure a loan, or, you know, whatever agreement has been decided here. And that goes in a separate account with the title company and is credited back to the buyer at closing. Okay, so here we will put the earnest money. Title policy and survey. Now, title policy is title insurance, and title insurance is I'm going to briefly go over this. Is where the title company makes sure that the title of a home is free and clear of any encumbrances, meaning that there's no liens against it. If there are any liens, they find out about them, and they have to be satisfied at closing or before. So one example would be if the seller has a mortgage on that home, that would be a lien. The title company would get the amount from the bank that the seller owes, and they would pay the bank with the proceeds that they get from the buyer. All right, this pair 6.8 here is kind of important, and this I always advise my clients to say here that we will be that the standard printed exception as to the discrepancies, conflicts, shortages in area or boundary lines, encroachments or protrusions, overlapping improvements. So if there are any encroachments from a neighbor, let's say, the title company would cover that if you put will be amended to read shortages in area at the expense of the buyer or the seller. Now, I always advise my buyers to put that will be amended and that the buyer pays for it. It's a very small price, you know, like not even $100, I think. But it's well worth it just in case there are any disputes when they do a search on the title. Survey is another important paragraph. The survey is the footprint of the home, and it's done by a surveyor. Oftentimes the sellers do have a survey, and so the buyer does not have to buy one. If the seller does not have a survey, then I always advise for the buyer to buy one. Now, this is something that can be negotiated between the seller or a buyer, and they usually, you know, they cost maybe about $450. Okay. Another important paragraph here is membership in property owners association. This is where we would put whether the home is in an HOA, as they're called, a property owners association. And most properties here in the Houston area do belong in an association. Okay, seller's disclosure of lead-based paint. This pertains to homes that were built prior to 1978. We have to give the buyer a form informing them that there could be lead paint in the paint that was used prior to 1978. And if they wanted to remove any of the lead paint, there's a booklet that is you know, printed out by the government, and we would present that booklet to them. The buyer accepts the property as is. So if you go and you see a property and you make an offer on that property, in the beginning you accept the property as is, or the buyer accepts the property as is, provided that the seller makes some kind of an improvement, a repair or something like that. We usually use this: buyer accepts the property as is. And then during the option period, we would do an inspection, and you know, we would then negotiate repairs with the seller. At this point, we usually here in the Houston area, we do not use this as much, that they would do any improvements before we even presented an offer. That's what this means. Okay, residential service contracts pertains to a home warranty. Okay, closing here would be when we were when the buyer and the seller would go to the title company, and they would sign the papers, and the buyer would be handed the keys. That's the closing date. We usually make this, you know, anywhere from a month. If it's a cash deal, we can do it in 3 weeks. If it's a loan, you know, 4 to 5, 6 weeks. Possession is whether the buyer will possess the home at the time of closing, or sometimes the seller might ask that the buyer lease out the home for a few days so they can move out. You know, sometimes they're moving to a new home and it's not ready, or they're moving out of state. So oftentimes the sellers do do ask buyers if they can lease the property back for a few days. Okay. This here, you would put the buyer information and the seller information, because any notices that one party needs to give to the other party must be hand delivered, mailed, or emailed, you know, faxed to this area, to these here. Okay, here we would put different addendums that might go with the contract. Termination option. This is a very important paragraph here. The termination option is decides the option period. So from contract signing to from, you know, like anywhere from 7 to 10 days, you can, for a nominal consideration, like a small amount, pay the seller to temporarily halt showings and give the buyer the right to inspect the property and negotiate. And at this point, during the option period, the buyer can get out of the contract, no questions asked. Okay, and of course, you should always, if you do want to, consult with your attorney. And that's it. This is a very important form, which is the contract. Actually, it's the offer, and if the seller accepts it, then it becomes a contract form. Thank you.